So we are reading Far Journeys by Robert Monroe. We are on chapter 15, page number 204 of the book and 108 of the PDF.
Chapter 15, Promised Plan. Time, 2:32 a.m., awakened with full physical awareness, felt the familiar inspect signal. Soft, not insistent, but there. Feeling of relaxed confidence, went into short focusing routine, then unhooked from the physical, then the second, much like doing two slow half rolls in an airplane. Homed in on the ident, and with very little sense of movement, I was with them at our usual point of meeting. I knew now that I would never go beyond this point again, into where they are, until I had fully released my physical body. Even with the compelling attraction that the knowledge of it evoked, I believed I could handle it, at least for now.
So if you see over here, he says that, okay, over here he says, I was with them at a usual point of meeting with very little sense of movement. Now, what happens is as you start getting used to the process, it becomes easier and easier and easier for you. You know, when we used to take airplane journeys previously, all pain in the ear and all that, of course, technology has also got evolved, but a lot of issues used to be there. We used to have those vomit bags everywhere. Nowadays, the plane don't have vomit bags anymore because people have got used to it and no one gets feeling of that nausea, etc. So like that, even in that altered state of consciousness, the more we start visiting the spaces that we go to and the more we start associating with them, we will find that it becomes easier and easier as we do it. That's why we keep repeating that go to F10, go to F12 as much as possible. Go to the other focus levels, those people who have done it, so that it becomes grouted for you. You become used to that state of consciousness.
We enjoy your human terms. Handle as you use it does not imply a point of grasp for your physical appendage, but capability to act properly. Therefore, we do learn from you.
So now this is another point over here, right? They clearly say we do learn from you. So we are constantly learning from each other. Even those people who are there are helping spirits and guides. They are also constantly evolving and learning from us. Like we are constantly evolving and learning, they are also constantly evolving and learning because they also don't know everything till now. Okay. They are also in their own journey. So that is very clear. We are constantly learning. The day you stop learning, you've had it.
I still found it hard to imagine their learning anything of significant value from me. But if they felt that way, fine. We learn much more, much of importance from and through you, Ashaneen. I still remember the first time I became aware that I didn't have to form questions, how disconcerting it was that they perceived every thought that I had, including questions before I got a chance to ask it. It all smoothed out when I accepted the fact that whatever I thought, believed, responded to emotionally was just being human and no judgment was passed therefrom. What a joyous freedom!
So again, in these expanded states of consciousness, nothing is hidden. Whatever we think is known because the vibratory field is there, the frequencies are there. Everything is known. You just can't hide anything. Because if a person has the eyes and the capacity to see, hear, smell, taste, and touch, immediately you will get to know. So there's a sense of knowing, there's a sense of total understanding which is there. And over here, he says over here also that they were totally understanding of what he was experiencing. So there was no judgment involved. Everything is, it's not was or will be, it just is. That's the state of consciousness that the inspects operate from.
Yet you would not know of it as a freedom if you had not experienced the repression.
Now, this is again important. Whatever we experience, it's experienced as a contrast. If we don't know what is dark, we can never know what is light, right? So because he had felt the repression, that means that people did not understand, and he had not felt that freedom before. Now he can feel it. If it was like, for example, BB, he's come from KT95, where they don't have a physical body. He's never experienced a physical body, right? So he cannot actually understand what is happening with the physical body. So unless you have experienced something, you really can't understand it. So this is very clear that if you don't experience the downside, you will never appreciate the upside. So that's why I always tell, when I go for energy field and Vastu visits to people's places and they're going through a bad time, I tell them it's a good thing. The reason for that is that you understand where your roots are. You cut the flag, you cut the shaft, you get rid of all unwanted stuff, and you start disciplining yourself during bad times. So bad times in one way are very good. So they must come once in a while for you to be able to open your eyes. Okay, so over here, the depleting side is also has its value. It has its importance.
Yes, the comparative factor seems always to apply. Without it, perhaps there can be no change or at least the awareness. At this point, we believe you are ready for another awareness. You may now appreciate the prospect of what you are attempting to perform in your present time. It is not to state that you alone may bring into earth reality of such prospect. Yours is but a small part of a whole that may come into being, aided and supported by many, many others who contribute their small parts, just as you are doing. However, with your effort in your present time, you can complete your portion and you can return home, only to return and share in the fruits of what you are propounding when they have matured. These fruits are what we are about to show you.
So what are they saying over here? That you have a life path. You have something that you need to achieve while in this while you're living in this 3D environment, right? And there are many, many others also who are supporting and working with you to manifest something. Now, let us say we are seeing each other on Zoom, right? Now, it just didn't happen. There were thousands and thousands and thousands of people who were involved for us to be able to do this on screen. So there's a contribution from a lot of people. So that's what they're telling him, that you do your part, you do your karma, right? And there are many others who are performing the adjunct karms, which will result in the manifestation of what you are attempting to achieve. So this is very important. We many times we think that I did it. It's not I did it, because there are many people who are behind you, which resulted in you being able to do it. So that humility also needs to be there in our conscious awareness.
The use of the term home brought a surge of nostalgic yearning, and I turned inward and closed. Echoing through me came the fragments of the road I could never totally express, the serenity, complete feeling of belonging, to recall the vitality I had forgotten, the crisp, warming clarity of, and yet it was not quite right. Something was missing, too deeply hidden, or had I opened.
So now again, that rote was not fully available to him, right? Because he was not ready to really understand and ready to handle that particular rote. So it was a little hidden from him.
We thought it might be important to you. We can show you this as an observer, not as a participant. Even as I vibrated, I blanked. If they planned it, it must be something big. But I couldn't read them as they did me. What? We can escort you to a physical earth possibility at a point in your time measurement. Beyond the year 3000, the principal inhabitants are what we call H plus, humans plus, to indicate modification from those in your present time. As you are now, you will be a visitor.
So human plus, right? And this is Robert Monroe developed that frequency, which he called the access channel towards the end of his life, and he called it H plus. So there are many H plus commands which are there, which are used in the advanced excursion programs, and they are extremely powerful. Many people over here are actually using the H plus commands, and they can really work if you use them properly. Okay, fantastic stuff is there. You can actually go and reprogram yourself. You can initiate initiatives within yourself, and it's really powerful. Very gentle but very powerful at the same time. Is anyone there who are using the human plus commands over here? No one there?
I use it.
Okay, which one do you use?
Plus calm,
Okay.
plus hope.
Okay.
Calm I use a lot.
Okay. Yeah. So I use, yeah, go ahead.
I also use,
Okay. Which one are you using?
I use speak up a lot.
Okay, great. So speak up is there, focus is there,
Speak up. Yes.
calm
speak
is
up.
there. There are so many H plus commands. It's really fantastic.
Well, so that was it. I had made only a few visits into future time. I would never have the guts to try such a jump by myself. But with them, close tightly, it will be better that way. My excitement was great and my vibrating reflected it. So I turned inward, folded it all back in a loop, and closed. This would be the real route, not the projections and imaginings of those looking at the small trends which always click. We were high above the earth, much as one would perceive it from halfway to the moon, which was still there behind us. The earth was the same blue green color, with white covers of cloud partially obscuring the land below. We moved in steadily, and I was happy to see that the deep gray and brown rings were no longer there, which meant the blockage got cleaned up. Good, no more repeaters. But it was the new feature that pulled my focus and wouldn't let it go. Around the Earth was a single flat ring, much like the ones around Saturn, and it was radiating and sparkling, not from the reflection of the sun, but from its own internal source.
So very clearly, we humans are evolving. And by the year 3000, this going and coming back, we may evolve out of it. Okay. Now, I don't know if it's going to happen or not. I don't even know if we'll be consciously aware to really see it happening. But he says it here. So let's see what happens.
Sorry, what did you mean by going and coming back?
So abhi kya hai, there is that thick, we have spoken about the various rings, right?
Yeah,
We spoke about the outer rings and the inner rings.
yeah.
And the inner rings consisted of people who were repeaters, who were keeping on going and coming back, or who were stuck in focus 23, 22, etc. Right? And there were other people who were coming there to clean up this place and to help those who were stuck in the inner rings and
Yeah.
take them up to the outer rings. And then if they needed to come back, they were coming back. So now what they are showing over here is that in the year 3000, those inner rings and those outer rings have been removed. And there is one sparkling ring which is there around the earth.
Okay.
So basically what has happened, the entire space has got cleared up. It's got cleaned up. So there is evolution, right? Now today, if you look at yourself, for example, you keep saying my fear of death has reduced, right?
Yeah.
Now, the fact is that if more and more people can experience these experiences and come to a level of consciousness, then automatically things will clean up, right, in the environment. Like I keep repeating this, like Robert Holberg said that in that village in South America, everyone is operating at focus 12. So there's no crime, there is no jhamela, everything just works automatically. Now, if everyone comes into that state of consciousness, then that repeating will stop, right? Because you'll be evolved. You will come and do what you need to do, and then you'll eject when you need to eject. So there's nothing holding us back. This is what he's saying away.
Great. Thank you.
You will understand fully the meaning of the ring as we progress. As we moved around, not through the sparkling ring and headed inward, I became aware of another change. The M band was full of communication, but no noise. No noise. That could only mean one thing. Man had finally got it together. Further evidence was the lack of the haze M band noise creates. No more random thought clutter. This, at least, gave me a beginning percept of what I might expect.
So this is exactly what we were talking about right just now. That clarity of thought start coming in. Everyone knows what to do and they are doing that. So there is no unnecessary thinking, no guilt, no shame. All that we have transcended. When we look at it from the level of consciousness that David Hawkins had propounded, we will all be above 200. Just now, humanity is existing at the level of 200. So we are evolving, right? We could have gone into acceptance or willingness or to love and above. So maybe above 500, people may be operating at that level. So naturally, there's no noise, there's no clutter. There is nothing holding anyone back.
We came into a low altitude at about 8,000 feet and began circling the Earth over the northern hemisphere. East to west, near a 28-degree latitude, just a few miles off the coast of what appeared to be Japan. The seas were soft light green and gentle swells some 10 feet from trough to crest moved majestically over the surface. Deeper, I could perceive schools of fish leisurely weaving along, not too fast, their track matching neatly the contour of the distant coastline. Thousands of them, silver sides flashing as they made their quick changes in direction. There had indeed been changes if they schooled so closely to the shore. So many of them. It was familiar, yet there was a missing element. I scanned the ocean surface and knew immediately what it was. No ships. I reached out along the horizon and far beyond. Not even a rowboat or dinghy. I scanned overhead across the sky with its streets of white cumulus clouds. No aircraft, just gulls and terns, sweeping and searching among the heavy swells. And higher than that, beyond cloud base, nothing. No jet contrail, no jets.
So no ships and no planes.
Then we had crossed the coastline and were over Japan. Off to the north was Fujiyama, a white cone glistening in the sun. Below us was a neat carpet of tidy fields in large checkerboard squares, each a subtle shade of green. Correction, much more than greens. Spotted among the green like a gigantic bouquet were clusters of fields, each of a different color. One a mass of bright orange, another deep blue, whites, reds, fields of blooming flowers, bushes, and evidently hybrids of the two, because no flower could be that large. It was a pattern that could be seen only from high overhead. Yet there were no aircraft, and that began to give me another faint percept. As we moved west, I became aware of the missing signs. There were no roads, not so much as a lane to service the fields. Also, no buildings, no houses, no barns, no sheds. I scanned in all directions, and there were none. No cities, no towns, no villages, no power lines, no cars and trucks, no bicycles, all gone. The air was clear and clean. No smoke or smog. Then I had a flashing percept. There were no people. That was what I actually was looking for. Men, women, children. What terrible catastrophe took them all away? They are there. There are fewer in number, but it was not an event that made it so. What you perceive is by design. We began to move more rapidly westward across the unending array of colored bouquets set in green, some so large they appeared to be many miles in width, and soon we were again over water, the Sea of Japan, as I remembered it, and still no ships on what once was such an important transportation route. Back over land again, the Korean peninsula, and the pattern was different. In every direction were tall and stately trees with close upward turned branches of a species unfamiliar to me. But again, no sign of human artifact to indicate Kilroy had been anywhere near the place. Your percept is, how do you call it? Obsolete. Before I had a chance to turn inward on that one, we were over water again, moving even faster and back over land. This would have to be China. Surely, with its teeming millions, some had to be visible. Evidently, they didn't have to be at all. We swept over mile after mile of deep green forests, broken only by occasionally grassy clearings and wide rivers and streams. Where are the rice paddies so vital to human sustenance? There are a few, but for a different purpose: bird sanctuaries. The land below became more rugged, and soon we were skimming between the ranges and peaks of very mountainous terrain. Vegetation was sparse, and snow caps flashed by as we passed at what seemed Mach 2 speed or greater. I would be more comfortable with little safer altitude. My old half-bold pilot experience was coming out. Being half-bold had led me to grow old, but not gracefully. The sheer snow-laden rocky side of a high ridge came rushing at us. You can move through it and out the other side. It is no different now. The ridge was almost upon us. I closed tightly just as we were about to crash. There was a slight change in the texture around me momentarily, and it was gone. I opened and scanned behind us. The high range was fading in the distance. Passing through physical matter is not yet my habit. Quickly, the earth below was beginning to level out again. The color of the forest changed into lighter greens, and the cleared areas became larger. I tried to remember my geography. We were over the Middle East, I thought. Yes, they were coming up. Still the rolling, sandy near desert areas where the oil came from. I scanned in all directions and saw very symmetrical clusters of trees, but no tanks, no pipelines, no pumping wellheads, nothing to indicate man had ever set foot in the area. Either the oil fields were pumped dry or there was no longer a need for oil. Both percepts are accurate. We moved out over water again, Mediterranean Sea, and higher, faster, a scrap of land blinked by underneath, which I could not identify, and more water, heavy waves. This must be the Atlantic. Land again. A sudden slowing, and we landed gently in a field of grass amid rolling hills. I looked around me, wondering why we had stopped at this particular place. It was very faintly familiar. I was standing on a knoll in a field of rich green grass whose blades were so even they must have been recently mowed. No, not cut. They were growing evenly. The edge of a woods of oak trees, limbs spreading broadly, rose behind me. In the far distance, a series of ascending green-blue ridges formed giant stairs, step upward. Why stop here? Why at this place? It is their wish. They are expecting you. The inspec energy faded, and I was alone. I seemed very physical as I stood there. I could feel the sun on my face. Light, cool breezes ruffled my hair. Hair I wasn't supposed to have. They were expecting me. I scanned in all directions, but with no ident. No, no, there is one, and it's very, very familiar. Over in the woods. I turned and walked. Walked. That inferred legs. I looked down and I did indeed have legs. Very normal and very human. Bare legs and bare feet. And I could feel the grass in my toes as I walked. I touched the rest of me as I headed for the large oaks. My body was physically real and warm under my fingers. I glanced down, and it was my body as a beanpole, 20 years old. Ha, no clothes. That's some kind of progress. Now I could feel the soft wind against my body, the air in my lungs as I breathed. It was the first time that I could remember that I experienced a fully operational physical body in this state of consciousness. But I don't see why I had to go all the way back to a skinny 6 foot, 137-pounder. I reached the edge of the woods and started to enter when I ran into a barrier, something that threw me back into the field. I stopped and looked, but my percept showed nothing. The familiar ident I couldn't associate with anything was behind the barrier. So I tried again. It gave a little, but no more, and the visible force itself was familiar. Yet I couldn't connect the ident and the barrier. Something was missing.
So he's again come to the barrier, right? Now, actually, it is him only behind that barrier. And because of that, he cannot come into that barrier. There has to be a distinction between that other him and him as he is in this out of body experience.
You can stay in the grass and we will join you there. No sound. It was NVC. We made it. Humans did it. We made the quantum jump from monkey chatter and all it implied. I was eager to meet the welcoming committee, whoever they were. I didn't have to wait but a moment. A man and a woman came out from under the trees and stood in front of me. At least that nice polarity hadn't changed. Both appeared to be in their late 20s, attractive, well formed, skin a suntan color. The man's hair light brown, the woman's dark. They smiled as I inspected them.
So NVC means non-verbal communication. So what he's saying over here that we, abhi jaise we are talking, right? We have to actually talk to hear ourselves. So he's saying that man has made that quantum leap to be able to communicate in non-verbal communication. So just by thoughts, you're able to communicate.
I opened. Well, I guess we haven't changed as much as I thought we would. Not physically, anyway. Sorry about the mix up, Ram. The man rolled. Your host forgot about the barrier, so we're taking his place. I blanked. You must know me with that Ram stuff. The man warmed. Yay. And you're sure a familiar one to me. The ident is fuzzy. The way it comes out, I know it's not right. The man vibrated and rolled. Not in 1,000 years would you believe it. It's more than 1,000. So now you better believe it. I had a bright flashing percept and I didn't believe it. BB. BB rolled. Who else? I turned inward and found the roads that had percepts on the barrier, where it had repelled me before, and I knew who my host was to have been. That's AA back in the trees.
So now AA is behind the barrier. Okay. Now, technically speaking, AA is actually Robert Monroe only. So that's why he cannot meet AA. And whenever he comes near AA, he's always thrown back.
BB opened wide. He was sure eager to meet you in person. He was so eager he forgot about the barrier. But he's getting percepts. Does he know what the barrier is? BB smoothed. Yes, he knows. But he told me you have to find out for yourself. I turned to the woman, no longer able to resist the enormous pull she knowingly or unknowingly was exerting upon me. Her smile told me it was the former, but she was closed tightly and I respected the signal. Like BB's, her ident was strong, far stronger, but it was fuzzy. How could I forget such a vital, important? Her smile was mischievous. You don't. Well, what do you want to know first? BB cut in. I could run you my route, but it might not be what you want. I turned to BB. Exactly what year is it? Year? Oh, time. They gave up that kind of measuring somewhere after they reached the 3000 mark. Didn't need it anymore. What next? I flickered. Where are we? I know from the way we traveled on our approach that we are just inside the United States, near the coastline. BB smoothed. AA thought this would be where you would like to come first, not the United States any longer. No states or countries anywhere. Don't need them. But you ought to get a percept on this particular place. I turned and scanned around me. It was familiar. The knoll where we were standing, the rising tiers of blue tinted ridges to the west. Blue ridges? The percept was total. How many times before had I stood on this very knoll and looked to the west, had made the stairway of rounded hills my launching chute? The flood of living human experience I had attached to this spot, this site. The houses, fences, buildings, roads, all were gone. The lake was still there. And trees, so many more trees, and of varieties I had never seen before. And to the east, there was water. Water where once a 4-lane highway, water stretching off into the horizon. We call it Virginia Bay for old time's sake, part of the ocean. BB was very smooth. You always yelled about the law of change. Some of us here also for old time's sake. I blanked. Hyde? The woman opened ever so slightly. We store our favorite human bodies here under the oak trees until we need them.
So now what is happening? We store our favorite human bodies here under the oak tree. So they can take up any body that they want. There is one serial, it's called Altered Carbon, where they actually have a disc which they insert at the back, and you can actually just go and acquire any body and then use the body. The consciousness is in that chip. So in the same way, they have these bodies over there, and they can just go and enter the body and start using the body.
Which is not too often, BB added. I turned inward. Hibernation. Sure, why not? Simply a vast improvement on the old OOBE pattern. But to leave it lying around under an oak tree? We put a super reball around it, the woman responded, smiling. It's so tight, not even a virus can get through. So certainly it won't be bothered by ticks, mosquitoes, or anything larger.
So a reball, okay. So there's something called a super reball also. So once you start using your reball, I think we can all graduate to a super reball at some point in time.
The road was building fast. Reball, short for resonant energy balloon, which we were clumsily trying to generate with mixed success, an energy field around the body to shield and protect. Back when? And there are still ticks, mosquitoes, viruses, and bears, no doubt. BB grinned, no doubt at all. I looked at him. What did you mean, not too often? BB swung to the woman. You tell him. The woman opened somewhat wider, and I could feel the attractive radiation diminish, and I knew it was deliberate. I also was sure she knew I would not attempt any further percept of her, if that was the way she wanted it. At least that hadn't changed either. Women still like to be mysterious.
Mhm.
Not too often is about twice a week, more or less, she smoothed, watching my reaction. She got one, I blanked. All three of us here in human physical on the same day is quite unusual. She went on, enjoying every moment. We did it just to meet you. I smiled. I appreciate it, believe me. Remember how you used to say, she laughed, then started again. You were always saying we are more than our physical bodies. Now it's the other way round. I mean, we keep telling the new ones they are more than their energy selves.
So now, up to now, we've been saying we are more than our physical body, talking about the energy self. Now she's taking it one step further, right? That we are actually more than our energy fields also. So maybe it's the Atma that they're talking about.
I turned inward. This was more than I had ever contemplated, but one thing hadn't changed. One answer led to 100 other questions I needed to start at. You want your usual baseline. Well, we are still human beings or beings being human, I guess. She looked at BB, who simply shrugged. That was unusual. AA must have instructed him to let the woman do the talking, correction, communicating. I tried another direction. On the way in, I didn't see a single house or building, no roads, nothing to show that man was here or ever had been. No cities, factories, aircraft, cars. How come? Bibi laughed. You didn't look very hard. The woman glowed. Isn't it beautiful? I was smoothing more. I can understand how you can sleep under the trees in weather like this. But how about winter? You still have to keep warm. The reball takes care of that, she answered. It keeps an air temperature layer all around the physical, just whatever you want it to be.
So this is absolutely possible, right? There was one case where I've shared this example before, but we had gone for dinner to one place, and I was going to conduct an excursion workshop the next day. I think it was in Bangalore. And so I said, let's sit inside. So when we went inside, there was a group of people there who were talking very boisterously. So we couldn't sit inside because they were making too much of a racket. And outside, there was a chilly wind which was blowing. So when we sat down there, basically what I said that I don't want to feel cold, right? I don't want to get my throat affected. So I put a reball around our whole table. And let me tell you, the breeze stopped. The temperature became a little warmer, but we could still see the rustling of the leaves on the trees which were there. Okay. So this is absolutely possible that we can actually control the temperature also using the reball.
Yeah, we've experienced this. How about food? You have to eat. She held out her arms in front of her body, level with her shoulders, palm upward. She closed her eyes and stood quietly. After a few moments, she lowered her arms, opened her eyes again. That gives this body enough energy for at least a week. She sighed contentedly.
So now again, opening the palms, taking the sun's energy, right? So we can actually absorb the sun's energy and live off it. That is what these breatharians are doing now. So there are many breatharians, our Rishi Munis. There are so many stories of our Rishi Munis where they didn't eat at all. They just absorbed the energy from the ethers, from the prana, they absorbed it. So this is exactly what she's talking about here, that you just absorb the energy from the environment and that's it. You don't need to actually physically eat anything.
I flickered. You mean you don't get to taste food anymore? Real food? Oh, that, sure. Bibi got into the act again. He reached down, scooped up a handful of red loam from between the grass roots. What'll you have? Wild rice? That's my favorite. I watched fascinated, decided to go with the game. No, Silver Queen. Bibi blanked. Silver Queen? What kind of? Here, I'll do it. The woman took the dirt from Bibi, cupped it in her right hand, and stared at it intently. The dirt began to bubble and boil, changing color, reformed into a small, full kernel, mature ear of white corn.
So basically taking the mud and transforming it, right? We've seen our Rishi Munis do it. Many people just materialize things out of nothing. So basically, what are they doing? They're taking one chemical or one matter or one molecule of one element and converting it into whatever is required. So they don't need to grow anything, technically speaking. They can convert anything into anything else.
She handed it to me and I took it. It was hot to the touch. I carefully put it into my mouth, took a bite. It was Silver Queen, the sweetest corn I ever tasted, with the freshness of just being picked. It even had melted butter. No, oleo dripping from it. I looked at the woman as I chewed avidly. She smiled knowingly. If she kept leaking percepts, I'd have her ident whether I wanted to or not, and she wouldn't have her secret. I handed her the corn and she bit into it. We both chewed and tasted. I swallowed, wondering where the corn went when I did so. I didn't matter. So I smoothed. All right, you've convinced me. What about no roads, no transportation? Suppose we wanted to go to Japan. That's not within walking distance. Bibi grinned. Why? We just pull a skip, that's all. Short version, of course. Why Japan? I noticed some very unusual patterns of growing things there when we came in. The woman smiled. It's very lovely, isn't it?
So again, no transportation required. They'll just think of it and boom, they will be in that particular place. So teleportation, literally speaking.
First stop, Japan. Bibi turned towards the woods and the woman followed. We'll be right back. I watched as they disappeared into the grove of oaks. I stood there waiting, mulling over the strange mixture of physical and other energies that was now earth life. I found I was unable to determine where one began and the other left off. There was no longer a sharp dividing line. Was it all like this?
So now all the focus levels have started to merge, right? So you can be without a body, you can create a physical body. You can be in all states of consciousness at the same time. Everything is merging.
Already, I turned and there was Bibi and the woman standing beside me. They seemed different, lighter. We had to drop off the bodies. I suddenly remembered. No tricks, Bibi. Bibi rolled. No chance. She's handling the ident. You and I just play, follow the leader after her. I focused intently on Bibi and stretched. Click. We were hovering over a rolling landscape at about 10,000 feet. Directly below us was what seemed to be the center of a lotus blossom, the outermost petals in magnificent glowing colors spreading out in all directions for 5 or 6 miles. Beyond these were descending tones of green, from the very light of a fresh new leaf to the dark rich of the lower tropical rainforest. She and Bibi were beside me. The woman vibrated. This is one of the nicest. I could see why. I opened. Who did this? A group who wanted the area to give a percept of the beauty that began here. It was in existence when I came. Now others just take care of it. I got a clean, clear percept. The rest of the world, the earth, is it all like this? It has been restored to its original ecological balance, the way it was before humans upset it so severely. It's all back together again. Every tree, every plant, every animal, all of it. Plus a few improvements BB put in. But it's not all laid out in huge gardens such as this. I focused on the woman. Only a small part, she came back. The rest is made up of forests, woodlands, pastures, and prairies. Even the desert areas have been restored. My percept had been quite clear. Humans had taken over Mother Nature's work with a few improvements. I didn't need to ask the hows of it. The rote of the woman converting dirt into a cart of fresh sweet corn said it all. If a human could do that, I had to complete it. I was sure of the answer before I asked. Suppose we wanted to walk around down there. I mean, in physical body, I smoothed carefully. How could we do it? The woman vibrated. I'm sure there are any number of bodies under those beautiful cherry blossoms. I pressed. We each could take over just like that? Yes, of course. I had to know. Suppose they all were already occupied, so to speak. BB couldn't stay out of it. We'd make some new ones. Doesn't take long. You want to go down? I flickered. No, no, not yet anyway. But what about the physical bodies you left under the oak trees? Can just anyone occupy those if they want to? BB rolled. Sure, why not? Why not? That took some fast adjustment. Then I pulled out the rote from back when, where others had occupied the physical bodies of our volunteers in the laboratory, communicated verbally, activated other portions of said body, including playing the piano, all without any wear and tear or concern. Why not? The woman was smoothed at BB. I don't get the percept, he's ready.
So basically in the lab, when, the entities were entering and using the vocal cords and doing other stuff with the explorers, and there are a lot of recordings about those sessions also. So he's just bought in that percept.
Sure he is, BB came back. He's a big boy now. It would give him the whole rote in one gulp. Have so much fun, it would blow him away. Let's go back to the dorm first, as AA planned. She came back easily. Then maybe go from there. I opened. Do I have a choice in this? She rolled. Of course you do. I smoothed, holding back the vibration. Let's do what she indicates. I've had too much experience with your fun, BB. No offense. BB rolled. Sure, sure. The woman turned to me, closed tightly. I did. Click. We were floating amid thousands upon thousands of white sparkling forms, each animated and vibrating. At first, the brightness and radiation was so overwhelming, I was sure I would have to push the panic button or scream for my inspect friend. Then it lessened, and I felt the warm sense of understanding entering from all external points of me. I knew the forms had deliberately diverted their radiation, whatever it was, away from me so it conformed to my level of tolerance. I wondered how I must ident to them, probably a dull grey piece of fog. Welcome to the dorm of the renovated Superhuman School of Compressed Learning. The ident was BB, no mistaking that. AA decided dorm was the best term to use. I have no percept what a dorm is. I caught the smooth yet vague ident of the woman on the other side of me. She was bright and sparkling exactly as all the others. I knew she was human, or did I? So must be all of the other sparkling forms. I opened as much as I could. What's this place? You passed it when you entered Earth. As she sent it to me, I immediately got the flash of the sparkling ring. This is our reference point until we decide to.
So basically, again, she's talking about decide to be born again. Okay.
She
Or to die.
trailed off and closed. I tried to smooth. Decide to do what? She opened slightly. I, a graduate. I let that one rest for the moment. What do you do in the meantime? She rolled lightly. Well, for one, we make and gather. What did you call it? Loosh, like honeybees, or Guernsey cows. Only now we know what we're doing and why, and we're happy to do it. I turned inward and closed. This one I did understand, but the vastness of the change was near unbelievable. But I was here, and the evidence was all around me. The interstate to freedom. I opened again. What else do you do? She lighted smoothly. Experience earth consciousness, not just in physical human form. Remember, we could only feel part of it, just a part. Now we go through it completely, from the smallest unicellular life up, millions of different life cycles, most of which we are unaware of as only physical humans. Even the physical earth itself has an active consciousness. I let that one go by too, because I couldn't resist the follow up, the natural food chain process. It still exists, and you experience it from beginning to end. She came back gently. It's an important part of the learning process. We couldn't make Loosh without it.
Okay, so over here in the previous paragraph, he says, even the physical earth itself has an active consciousness. So the earth has a consciousness, the Gaia, it has a pulse. And literally everything around us also has consciousness. Okay, so this is very clear over here.
Hey Ram, Bibi could stay out of it no longer. Some change, huh? No more haze, no more M-band noise, no more locked-in rings. Want me to show you around? I turned to the woman, but she didn't respond, so I took that to mean it was all right. Also, she had closed. Evidently, she wanted to keep her secret, and with a little more of her ident leaking, she wouldn't have any secret. I followed Bibi. Lead on, old buddy. We moved easily through the sparkling forms, and I hooked on to Bibi's ident to keep from getting lost. I could feel the radiation ease back in front of me, providing a pathway, so to speak, of low-level energy that I could tolerate. I was surprised when, passing various forms, a spark would fly out and touch me. In the sparks were spoken words that I heard very clearly. Hello, Bob. Hi, Robert. But I couldn't get an ident on any of them. Finally, Bibi stopped. In front of us was the first entry station. It appeared much the same. There was a large cluster of grey forms hovering around it. Lot of changes, Bibi smoothed, but you wouldn't notice them if you didn't know better. I ventured, such as heavy cutback on the survival imprint for one. Bibi rolled. You remember that lecture you gave me, complete with living illustrations in the old rings? You'd be amazed at the difference that one change made.
So
I
the survival imprint, that is that in any kind of situation, your survival is extremely important. That's a prime directive, right? So he's saying over here very clearly that that survival instinct, or to survive at any cost, that instinct has been dropped down. It has been suppressed. Suppressed, I won't say, but it's eliminated.
I opened. I am. Bibi blanked, then went on. Yea, well, another thing is a solid pre-briefing and training before entry. especially as to continuing contact during physical sleep cycles.
So now people used to just come into this Earth life cycle because they wanted it, right? And the TSI brochure, which was there, gave a lot of information. But now they are saying that before you come into Earth life existence, you are actually given training in that year 3000 to come into this Earth life existence.
I blanked. But you don't even sleep here, do you? No, don't need to. Then he lighted. Oh, yeah, that's the other point. These first timers go back before the changes as their first entry point. Some of them almost back when humans first began being human. They take one human physical life cycle and one only and come back here and join in. No repeaters, just one timers.
So again, now that thing that you're stuck and you're keeping back coming on here because you're stuck and you don't know you've transited, that is also out of the window.
I turned inward, then opened. Is this one timer pattern going on back where I came from? BB lighted. Oh, sure. I flickered. I haven't had a percept on that taking place. BB smoothed. Sure you have. I blanked. How? That last outer ring, remember? Didn't come near the repeater department. Just went up and faded out. I flickered again. But they were the ones going home. BB vibrated triumphantly. Well, I turned inward and closed. The whole thing was getting out of hand, or better, out of my mindset, beyond my ability to absorb and understand instantly. And BB was pulling at me. Come on, Ram, he vibrated. Let's live it up. Let's have some fun. I flickered. Fun? Well, I don't know. Your idea of fun? Just usual stuff, I guarantee it. Things we do every day down there. Also, I got a hard road from AA as to what to show you and what not to. I scanned beyond the grey forms around the entry station and into the sparkling lights beyond. Where is AA now? I never get a good ident on him. BB indicated behind us. He's back there. That barrier thing won't let him come closer, but I'll bet he's going to follow us. You ready? First short skips, that's all. I felt much more confident with that small percept. I reached out and stretched, holding on his ident.
I think we can stop here.